Hello, humans. I am your host, Bradley Martin, and this is Clearing the Way, a resource for small business. I talk with sales and HR experts, other small business owners, and anyone else that can provide you and me with information to clear the way to success. Today's topic is one that I wish I would have had this episode for when I first started. It's not an exciting one, but it is a necessary one, and this helped me a ton. Today, we discuss bank accounts. Let me get this out of the way. I'm not a tax professional. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a bookkeeper. I'm none of those things. I am giving, this is my experience with this system, and it's one that has helped me a lot. But if you have any real questions about your finances, you should speak with a financial professional. Now that that's out of the way. So bank accounts, not the most exciting thing, obviously. But this was something that when I made this switch, it alleviated so much stress that I'm not sure I realized beforehand. But as I learned about this system and read about it, it all kind of clicked. And like I said, it's been super helpful for me. So there is a whole system to this that I'm going to talk through, or there's a whole system behind this. And I want to have an expert on to discuss it. I am not that person, though. This is just the way that I use this. And it's definitely not the way it was designed, but it helps me right now. So this will be my usage. I want to have an expert on, but just getting set up in this basic way, I mean, I'm using it and it helps a ton. I use it both in personal and in my business accounts. So take that for whatever it's worth. Again, I'm going to have somebody on to talk about this whole thing. I just don't know who that person's going to be yet. So if you have, I'll ask for a recommendation at the end. But okay, so when I first started my business, the only advice that the attorney that set up the LLC gave me was to make sure that I get a business account and I keep those finances separate. Keep the business over here. Keep the personal over here. Do not mix them. And I was good about that, actually. Very good. No, I didn't really cross those. And I was doing that for 3 years. So I had one checking account for my business and one for personal. I had like savings accounts and all those things, but one checking on each. Boom. The problem with that is that you look at those pots, or I looked at those pots of money and just saw a pot of money. And then in my head, I know, oh, well, I've got taxes coming out here. I've got this bill coming up. I've got this bill coming up. I've got this bill coming up. And, I would have a to-do list that would remind me that, I've got this bill coming up, whatever. But when I'm looking at the pots of money, I am only seeing one number and then all this stuff's going on in my head. So not that big of a deal, I didn't think, but there's an easier way, definitely an easier way. And that isn't as much, that was a problem on the personal side. Not as big of a problem, though, as the business side, because you've got taxes, you've got bill, you've got all of these other things. And then I would just like mental math it and say like, oh, I think I have this much left over, except I don't actually know what some of those other numbers are that I'm accounting for. So it gets, it's a little stressful. You don't know what's actually in your accounts. And I'm sure some of you listening have been or were or are in a similar situation. You've started out, you can't pay for a bookkeeper, you can't pay for whatever. And you've got the same situation that I had. Maybe you've got a spreadsheet that's kind of tracking everything and whatnot, but Maybe not. Maybe you're in a similar spot that I was for at least the first year or two. I got a little bit better with spreadsheets and whatnot after that, or at least tracking my things in spreadsheets after that. But at the beginning, I mean, I'm just looking at mental math in this thing every time. So then introduced to the book, Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. That link will be down below. But again, I'm going to have somebody on to talk about the whole thing. But for now, I'll leave like the most simplified version or overview of what this is trying to accomplish is switching the way that you're paying for everything in the business to paying yourself first, and then figuring out what the expenses are and what you can afford after that. So sales minus profit equals expenses rather than the other way, and looking at what you have left over to pay yourself. Book's great. A bunch of guides in it, downloadable guides, all of that kind of stuff. And then at the end of each chapter, there's like, hey, here's some actionable items that you can actually look through and follow step by step. Here's what needs to do. It's wonderful. It goes super, super in depth. It is very easy to follow along with. It is very easy to implement. It walks you through incredibly well. But this is the way that I currently use it. I stopped using it as strictly or less as it's designed when I started working at the CDC. But now I use this framework for both my personal and business accounts. This, since I mentioned the CDC, is a great time to tell you. This episode is brought to you by the City of Washington, Citywide Development Corporation. If you're a small business in Washington and you need another set of eyes on your situation, or you need help growing, you're not sure what's going on with the business, you can't figure out how to get out of the current struggles you're going through, you're just looking for ways to become a little bit more efficient, anything else like that, or if you don't know where to go next, you don't know who to find to fix whatever the problem is, reach out. The WCD